testimony component. Okay. As I said, we'll call up groups of 3 at a time. Buzzer is a reminder at 30 seconds. So 2.5 minutes in, you'll have 30 seconds left. Please try to mind the time. So we'll start with Tracy O'Connell-Novick, Carolyn Garrett, and Donna Calorio. Please come up and then introduce yourselves one at a time. And then remain through the panel just for process. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy O'Connell-Novick. I'm a former Massachusetts teacher. I'm a mother of 3 children in the Worcester Public Schools, and I'm a 3-term member of the Worcester School Committee. I also currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Urban Divisions of Districts in the Mass Association of School Committees. You today are asking a multiple choice question when it should be an essay question. The question before us is not MCAS or PARC. The question is how to assess students in a way that strikes a balance among considerations of accuracy, fairness, expense, and administration. It should employ a variety of assessment instruments on either a comprehensive or a statistical valid sampling basis. As much as is practicable, such instruments should include considerations of work samples, projects, and portfolios, and should facilitate authentic and direct gauges of student performance. Mr. Chair, none of the above is my idea. That's what you're legally bound to do. That's Mass General Law, Chapter 69, Section 1L, which has been sitting on the books since the Education Reform Law passed 20 years ago. This does not by any stretch of the imagination describe MCAS, nor does it by any stretch of the imagination describe PARC. There's no way around it, Mr. Chair. We're not following the law. We have not been following the law. And should you indeed limit yourself to the either or of the test before you, we still will not be following the law, whichever way your vote goes in the fall. Thus, while I would urge you to take seriously the concerns that have been raised by those who have tested the PARC, like those before it just previous, from questions of age appropriateness, 3rd graders, for example, don't write essays, to technology issues, which cannot be dismissed with, you should have magically already done this with an underfunded foundation budget that doesn't include technology, to sequencing in time. The amount of time an individual student may spend on a test in no way does not measure the impact it has on either the school or the entire district. The main problem of your choice will still remain. While I have heard many of these concerns parried and quite a few simply dismissed, what I have not heard is any attempt made to justify a system that continues to, at ground, measure nothing so well as parent income and education level. The exception to this too often are the result of school practices that none of us here would tolerate for our own children, and of attrition rates that I would respectfully suggest should have schools thoroughly investigated. As Deputy Commissioner Wolfson told you a few months ago, the SAT most reliably reflects parent income and education. This is no less true with our own standardized tests. So long as students, teachers, schools, and indeed entire communities stand or fall based on family W-2s and diplomas, you will continue to have gaps, whether you refer to them as gaps of achievement or of opportunity. As a system of assessment, that's unacceptable. The massive infusion of investment that came as the result of the McDuffie lawsuit deserved a better partner than the current system of assessment. This is an opportunity to finally right that wrong. Adopting PARC will not do that, Mr. Chair. We could finally follow the law regarding the assessment of our students. I would urge the board to adopt neither of the assessments offered and instead adopt authentic and direct gauges of student performance that include consideration of work samples, projects, and portfolios. That's absolutely doable. And it is, after all, Mr. Chair, the law.
My name is Carolyn Goretti. I am a resident of Wilbraham, where 3 of my children attend school for the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District. They are 16, 14, and 11 and have grown up in the MCAS era. Wilbraham and Hampden have both overwhelmingly passed non-binding ballot questions that do not support Common Core. I have taught special education for over 14 years and currently teach at a private school called Valley West Day School in Chicopee. We work with social, emotional, and behavior disorders, and I teach 9th and 10th grade literature. I would like to thank Charlie Baker for demanding these hearings because I believe they wouldn't have happened without his insistence. Let me tell you that kids are on their knees, and they are They're begging for mercy. They are sick of being tested. Their self-esteem is rock bottom. Their love of learning is non-existent, and their antipathy towards education is alarming. They hate school. This is straight from the mouths of my own children, their friends, their parents, my colleagues, and my students. I have witnessed a student lying on the floor in the fetal position crying and refusing to take the ELA MCAS, a girl who had the vocabulary and writing talent of a Nobel Prize winner. I have watched absenteeism skyrocket on the days of testing because the students can't handle the stress. I deal with children so anxious they can't eat during the day or vomit and make themselves sick. These children struggle with ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, bipolar disorder, learning disabilities, anger issues, and the list goes on. The last thing they need is another test with no reliability, no validity, no transparency, and that sets them up to fail. I'm talking about the PARCC test, in case you didn't know. What these children need is safety and security and compassion. More than anything, my students want assurance that I will be there tomorrow, next week, and next year. They want to know that I will support them in their learning process and engage them with their various learning styles, interests, and abilities, and not give up on them. Alfie Kahn gets it right when he says students need to feel connected to people. They need to feel competent at doing things. No Child Left Behind removed that factor. Everything changed in education with No Child Left Behind. Teachers were forced to teach to the test and standards that created a pressure cooker for children and teachers and took a lot of the fun out of learning ruled. Kids that used to grow and mature into their education were now pushed, labeled, and medicated to conform and keep up. IEPs grew to unprecedented levels as schools funneled the children that couldn't keep up into special education programs. The stress has been a dangerous experiment on our children. It is no surprise that mental health issues have skyrocketed with the enormous pressure on our children to perform. The constant pressure from early ages, which has resulted in the increased burnout that is becoming more common, even with high-performing students, and the side effects of medication that have often led to depression, highs, lows, sleep disorders, addictions, suicide attempts, and a whole host of issues. Just visit the hospitals with beds for children and listen to their stories and experiences. It is heartbreaking. I have witnessed my students struggle to pass the MCAS and controlled and begged them to try just one more time. Most of my students end up passing it, but a few couldn't and only received a certificate of attainment rather than a diploma. That set them up for a life of no college, no military, and little opportunity. Somehow that seems unfair to a child that has tried as hard as they can for 12 years and is held back from ever going farther just because their top performance didn't match the expectation of one test. Now we have Race to the Top, which is dragging our children and teachers even farther down a road toward mediocrity. Scripted, developmentally inappropriate curriculums that are untested, unproven, and creating even more anxiety as they continue to remove all forms of creativity and teaching to various multiple intelligences. Our students who used to feel excited and confident about learning are now considering themselves failures as they constantly have to go through reteaching, remediation, and retaking of tests. Huge chunks of necessary curriculum are no longer offered in the Common Core curriculums that will result in real deficits as time goes on. There's no more fun in learning for them as specialists have continually declined and money is funneled into Common Core curriculums and technology. Our teachers are feeling attacked, overburdened, and helpless. Pearson's version of the PARCC in New York is generating data of a 25% graduation rate, which is unconscionable, especially since test items and results aren't allowed to be seen by parents, teachers, administrators, and taxpayers. Are we supposed to trust their word with no proof that this is better than what we had? Are we as a society going to allow 75% of our children to fail high school? I have gone online and taken the 5th grade and the 10th grade sample test for PARCC and wanted to scream and pull my hair out. The questions were confusing, developmentally inappropriate, and set the children up to fail. The computer experience itself was a nightmare. Even the kids know how bad they are. Colleagues have come to me complaining about their children completing packet after packet of test prep for the park test all year, with tears and confusion and anxiety galore. If you vote for the park test, I can assure you that Massachusetts will be in the same boat as the other states, with students in the hundreds of thousands boycotting these tests. You will be wasting more money that could have been used on our students instead of given to Pearson for a failure of a product. Parents will not accept a 75% failure rate, and they will demand access to this test. I also challenge each and every one of you to publicly take portions of the 11th grade Park ELA and math tests and publish your results. Politicians around the country have tried, given up, and couldn't finish it. If your vote is a yes for Park, it should be a requirement that you have taken the test publicly and passed it due to its nature and controversy surrounding it. And by the way, where are the results from the Park test? I thought the results were supposed to be quicker than the MCAS. And I bet the Park results come out after the MCAS results, or maybe we won't be allowed to see them at all, like in other states where it's been 3 years and they still don't have them, but have never materialized. I also recommend that you remove high-stakes tests as a diploma requirement in Massachusetts. I feel that standardized tests are only one piece of the puzzle and shouldn't be a sole factor in removing the opportunity for a child to receive a diploma. It has taken away all creativity as teachers feel they have to teach to the test or their jobs are on the line. I have a husband who is an engineer. I understand what businesses want. I understand their anxiety over children or students that need remedial help. And I think the standards have created this issue. Instead of allowing teachers to be creative, instead of allowing students to work on projects, to follow their hearts, they are teaching to the standard, to the test. As an engineer, my husband has worked for Covidien, which makes medical devices, which was taken over by Medtronics this year. He currently works at Tightflex. He went to Western New England University, which has wonderful programs with real-life experiences where students go into companies and do internships. We need more of that. We need it at the K through 12 level. We need other things besides standards in one test. We need businesses working with our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Colorio. I served on the Worcester School Committee from 2011 to 2013. I've been an adjunct psychology professor at Quinsigamond Community College and an MTA member for the last 22 years. And most importantly, I am a mother of 3, both. And my youngest is attending a Worcester high school. I want to thank Charlie Baker for allowing these public forums to be heard on the topic of Park exam and the real world impact on Common Core standards on teaching and learning. I am here today to say the state of Massachusetts has no business moving forward in Park. Just last week, Ohio dropped Park, going from 26 states in its consortium down to 8 states, including DC. Park is dying, and my question to you is, why are we still on this sinking ship? I am here today to present to you a petition that we published online, along with approximately 6,000 signatures, and I would like to read it to you today. And some of these are handwritten signatures I will submit to the chair, Mr. Sagan, when I'm finished, and some of them are online, but approximately 6,000. This is a petition to Governor Charles Baker, Secretary of Education James Pizer, and Chairman Paul Sagan, Board of Elementary and Secondary Ed. Whereas Massachusetts has earned national and international recognition for students' achievement from 1998 to 2007, and the decisions about the rigor of Massachusetts standards and tests were made by school and university educators in the Commonwealth. And whereas decisions about curriculum should be made by parents throughout their locally elected school committees in consultation with local teachers and administrators. And whereas the education of children should be grounded in developmentally appropriate practice. And whereas the Common Core state standards were developed and funded by private organizations. And whereas the Common Core state standards were adopted by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education without the knowledge and/or approval of the local school committees, parents, and other citizens of Massachusetts. And whereas the Common Core state standards in mathematics are benchmarked approximately 2 years behind international standards, according to Professor James Milgram, the only mathematician on the Common Core Validation Committee, who consequently refused to sign off from the Common Core state standards. And therefore, we, the undersigned, instruct the Governor of Massachusetts, the State Board of Education, and the state representatives to take the steps necessary to bring about the immediate repeal of the adoption of the Common Core state standards, the application for the grant known as Race to the Top as it relates to the Education Reform Act, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, the No Child Left Behind waiver, the appropriation of all state funds for its technology needed for any Common Core-based tests, and the immediate cancellation of the membership in the PARC Consortium, and to remove all restrictions and requirements related thereto and have been placed upon the state and returned to the pre-2010 Massachusetts state standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you give it to the staff secretary? Elaine, thank you. Marty O'Shea from Superintendent of Schools from Wilbraham, I believe, arrived. Welcome.
Thank you.
We try to take the superintendents up front, but I got your name a little late. I apologize.
Not a problem. Once again, my name is Marty O'Shea. I'm the Superintendent of Schools in the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District. I also serve on the Superintendent's Advisory Council to the Department of Education and was a coordinator of the Western Massachusetts Education Leaders Coalition. I sit before you today certainly believing that standardized testing can provide an important measurement of district student and individual growth and achievement. Yet I would like to talk to you broadly about my concerns about standardized testing as you try to make a decision on the PARC exam. I think that the emphasis that Massachusetts has come to place on standardized testing tends to narrow the curriculum, compromises instruction, and ultimately creates an educational environment that stifles creativity and places more emphasis on test scores than genuine learning. The coalition that I referred to is a group of 15 Western Massachusetts school districts that came together on their concerns around a number of issues, one of which was standardized testing. 15 school districts signed off on a statement along with their school committee chairs and union presidents expressing their concern about the emphasis on standardized testing and the notion that it, again, tends to compromise instruction. I'd suggest to you today that as you make a decision, that my hope is that you will develop an assessment system that shortens the time required for individual tests, test students less frequently, and not necessarily on an annual basis. I also ask that you ensure that the results of any new assessment system not be used until there is a sufficient pilot period, until instructors, educators have had time to adjust their instruction to the nature of the exam. I also ask you to ensure that educators have adequate time and resources to make those shifts. And finally, as has been said earlier, I ask you to make sure that school districts are supported with necessary hardware and technology infrastructure to implement the test. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one question. Have any of your schools trialed PARC either?
We were not a trial district.
Thank you. Krista Finke, I think. Laura O'Keefe. And Beth Jarasbeck.
My name is Krista Fink. I'm the 5th and 6th grade science teacher at Excel Academy in Chelsea. I've worked in education for 8 years now, and I've seen teachers use test data in a variety of ways to best meet the needs of their students. While my students still take MCAS for science, I've seen the benefits of our transition to PARCC this year across our school. The way PARCC tests students allows us to design curriculum that fosters skills rather than memorization. PARCC, with its use of research-based analysis, problem solving, and critical thinking, has genuine potential to prepare them for college and for beyond. I truly believe that with more practice and familiarity, this test will help us foster valuable life skills through every lesson we teach. And while this test is more challenging than MCAS, I know that our students will leave our classrooms better prepared for the challenges that await them. At Excel, many 5th graders enter our school significantly below grade level, facing socioeconomic challenges as English language learners, with reading and communication disabilities, social and emotional issues, and much more. Throughout their 4 years within our walls, we continuously discuss the challenges they will face because of their zip code. And while this is unfair, we are transparent about this reality. The reality that they will need to work even harder than their counterparts in other wealthier districts to go to and finish college. The difficulty of PARCC combined with the setbacks my students face does not deter me from supporting PARCC. Teachers across my school feel strongly about the value it added to our students' overall success. Our 6th grade teacher stated, "PARCC's alignment with Common Core has upped the rigor of my course. Its inclusion of a variety of genres of writing, including narrative, literary analysis, and research-based, has pushed me to build students as more well-rounded learners and writers." As a science teacher, the analysis students do with nonfiction, often science-based texts, shows them how deeply each of our subjects are truly connected. Students light up when they see practice PARCC readings about electricity, rocks, and much more. This method of using evidence and reasoning to support a claim is the basis of our 6th grader science course at Excel. While PARCC has presented challenges already, I'm hopeful that the flexibility of the assessments creators will generate more changes as we continue to come across bumps in the road. PARCC's openness to feedback has already inspired them to combine the PBA and EOI assessments, making the test even more manageable for both students and for teachers. The reality is, standardized tests are not perfect measurement of growth or trajectory of our students. But in contrast to the MCAS, PARCC provides cross-state comparable data. PARCC offers a unique opportunity to see how our students stack up against students in other states, as well as an opportunity for collaboration and sharing of resources among state lines. This is a huge part of PARCC that excites me as a teacher and as an advocate for students all over the country. While testing is not my favorite time of year, I know that utilizing data to refine my teaching is an important way that I can prepare my students for future success. This is why I teach, to open up a world of opportunities to young, eager minds. I support PARCC because I know it will set our students up to be critical thinkers and problem solvers who are ready to change the world. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'll give my little lecture. Didn't do it when you applauded, but I'm going to do it now. I expect people to be polite and to hear everyone respectfully. If you want to applaud at the end, it'll just use up time, and maybe some of your friends and neighbors won't get to testify. If you're disrespectful to someone who speaks on either side of the issue or an side I haven't heard yet, I'll back them up and they'll do it all over again so they get heard, because we're going to hear all views. I expect everybody to treat everybody with respect, and if you're not able to do that, I'd invite you to leave and not waste our time. Thank you. Please. No, I don't need you to applaud or root for that. Just be respectful and move it along. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Laura O'Keefe, and I am a 16-year middle school teacher in Ludlow, Massachusetts. I have been following the PARCC MCAS debate closely, as well as the larger school reform, Common Core, privatization, opt-out movements, etc., that are currently sweeping the nation. 2 years ago this fall, I attended an informational meeting on the PARCC exam, sponsored by DESE and held in my hometown of Wilbraham. It was there when I first learned that DESE was hoping to administer these exams 3 times a year, October, March, and May, in the subjects of math, ELA, and a new category called speaking and listening, to all students in grades 3 through 11. The DESE representatives called these new tests exciting for the students, teachers, and parents of Massachusetts. This was the first red flag for me. As a veteran educator, coming from a family of educators, mother of 3 children ranging from ages 19 to 11, and a lifelong citizen and student of Massachusetts public schools, I found that statement almost comical, as I know not a single student, teacher, or parent who thinks that the prospect of more standardized tests is exciting in any way at all. Red flag number 2. One of the most troubling aspects of this debate, as these forums have been held across the state, is the supposition that somehow PARCC and the Common Core state standards these exams are aligned to have introduced critical thinking skills and perseverance in our classrooms. Teachers have long designed lesson plans based on critical thinking skills. Learning how to acquire knowledge, evaluate it, analyze it, critique it, and use it to create new knowledge. These things have been staples across Massachusetts classrooms for decades. Common Core and PARCC did not invent that. Ironically, such critical thinking skills are nearly impossible to gauge on standardized tests, which is why as teachers we use so many other forms of assessment in our classrooms. We assess all the time, and we adjust our practice to the needs of our students daily. To insinuate that we need more standardized tests to do what we do daily is insulting. And rigor. If rigor means challenging students to persevere through what they find difficult, we've been doing that for decades, if not longer, as well. Classrooms have always been places where children can think outside the box, to persist, to try and fail, and try again, without the punitive labels that standardized tests are increasingly foisting upon our children. Teachers, parents, guidance counselors, healthcare professionals see that anxiety in our classrooms. Test anxiety is higher than it's ever been. I see it every year when a new batch of middle school students walk into my classroom. Yes, I challenge my students, but I do not demand strictness, severity, harshness that defines rigor. Finally, while I truly believe that my colleagues who support PARCC and the standards behind them mean well, I know that teachers do not need PARCC to challenge students and to teach critical thinking skills. In fact, these tests inherently cannot measure such skills. Committed teachers have always believed in high standards for our students, and we also believe that testing is a piece of the education puzzle. But we also know that standardized testing is most useful at measuring students' economic backgrounds. Therefore, it is only a very small piece of the puzzle. Students, teachers, and parents do not find the prospect of increased testing exciting. The testing industry does. There are billions of dollars to be made on the backs of our students. Red flag number 3, people are being used as pawns for this billion-dollar corporate reform testing industry. They are being paid to speak in support of PARCC. I am not being paid to speak in opposition to it. States are dropping out of PARCC left and right. Ohio did just this last week. Massachusetts, for so long a leader in education, needs to do right by its students. We don't need PARCC. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Beth Jarzabek, and I'm proud to be an educator in the Ludlow Public Schools and a mother of an incoming middle school student in Ludlow as well. And I am strongly opposed to the implementation of PARCC and the increased focus on standardized testing. The focus on testing has reduced our students as a whole, my students specifically, and my child, to data points that are to be tallied in order to determine if the students are worthy and if myself and my fellow educators are effective. And I fear that with the implementation of PARCC, this will only be made worse. As stated in earlier testimony, the PARCC test requires more testing, which is more time away from meaningful curriculum. My goal in becoming an educator was to help my students, who are often the ones who struggle, to become well-rounded readers who can interact with literature, not students who are adept at filling in bubbles with the looming countdown of a time limit. With the MCAS test, there is now a procedure or provision for students who vomit on the test booklet. You put a time limit on these kids, and that is only going to increase. I've had, in my experience, students who have to sit with the trash can next to them. That's without a time limit. On a bigger scale, and as has been stated before, states have been dropping park and common core at a steadily increased rate. One must ask themselves why, if Massachusetts is supposed to be a leader in education, why are we making a move to a system that others have already deemed to be faulty? In the book, Death and Life of the Great American School System, Diane Ravitch, who is a respected expert on education, states, "Our schools will not improve if we value only what test measures. The tests we have now provide useful information about students' progress in reading and mathematics, but they cannot measure what matters most in education. What is tested may ultimately be less important than what is untested. It is my sincere hope that you decide to stem the tide that has begun to wash over education in our state and act in a manner that shows that our children have value beyond being data points and pawns in a corporation's marketing scheme." Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Orgazalik, Connor Driscoll, Sarah Fiorentino.
Hi, my name is Diana Gorzalak, and I'm a teacher in Ludlow. I'm a special education teacher of 8th grade students, and I'm also a mom of 2 girls. Many of the points that I was going to make here about the park versus MCAS have been made, so I'll keep my remarks brief. But as was the case at the hearing at the State House in June, the invited experts have come out to support the park test. But the people who come here of their own volition, the parents, the students, the teachers that I'm hearing are very strongly opposed to it. People who have any experience with it at all dislike it and don't want it. Enough so that they're willing to take time out of their summer vacations and come here and talk to you tonight. These people, like myself, the overwhelming majority, indeed all teachers and parents that I have spoken to, strongly oppose park. This reflects the feeling in the rest of the country as well. The Park Consortium, which had included 26 states and Washington, D.C., we know now only includes 7. You must be asking yourself, why are so many states jumping off of this park test? I mean, this is the feeling around the country. People don't want it. People have tried it. They're frustrated with it. They don't want it. And I certainly don't want it for my students or my children here in Massachusetts. Why in Massachusetts, a state known to be #1 in the country, would we want to adopt this problematic and faulty test? Like so many others, I question, why are the invited guests here stacked with pro-park opinions? Why do we need to invite people to come out and speak for the park? Because I find that the people that I talk to in my everyday life, in my profession, I've been a teacher for almost 20 years, don't like park. They know that there are problems with it, and they don't feel that we need it. So I'm just wondering, and I think a lot of other people sitting here are wondering, why the invited guests are pro-park and why they have been invited here and speak first. I, like so many, including the Pioneer Institute for Public Policy Research, feel that Commissioner Chester should recuse himself from the decision between MCAS versus park, as Mr. Chester chairs park, the park governing board. This is clearly a conflict of interest, and given the strong teacher and parental feeling against park, which has been corroborated around the country, we need to take this seriously and give our students the respect they deserve in regard to this decision. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Connor Driscoll. I'm a 6th grade teacher in the Gill-Montague Regional School District, and this year I was also the middle school's park test coordinator. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share our experience. The question...
Were you online or paper-based?
Oh, we did the online test, and actually that's an important piece. The question of whether or not to use park goes beyond just the impact on school culture and student learning. While it's true that because of the park test and the technology constraints of our school, we had a disrupted schedule for 27 school days, about 15% of the school year. Those technology constraints may be unique to our school, and they may not be indicative of the greater impact of park. That being said, anyone who is concerned with student time on learning should raise an eyebrow when 9 separate test sessions per grade level are given to students. We know that now that has been pared down a little bit, which is nice. The greater question here, though, is one of validity. Is the park test a valid assessment of student learning? I can say based on what I've seen this year that currently the answer is no. To be a valid assessment of student learning, factors aside from gaps in learning need to be minimized so that the only thing that can really impact the outcome is what a student knows or doesn't know. In the case of park, there were several other variables that could have changed student outcomes, and I've got a couple examples here. The first variable is that park has test-specific tech tools which are not used outside of the test, anywhere. So teaching these tools fell to core academic teachers and took more instructional time where kids could have been learning content rather than how to use a tool that they would only need on the park test. The second big variable here, and this was a huge one for us, was test glitches. The test was absolutely loaded with them. Just like in sports, when a student's focused on a task, they get in the zone. And nothing can break that faster than a problem with the test. It's like the ball pops when you're driving to the hoop. Several times, test items simply didn't work. There were errors where students couldn't enter answers in the answer box, and where answer choices simply didn't appear to be options. We were told to have students click forward in the test, then go backwards and see if that helped. And while it allowed them to enter the answer, it broke their concentration. Other times, the test simply kicked them out for no apparent reason, and they had to pause what they were doing, log back into the program with their student identifying code. And that often happened several times with the same student, just creating a sort of not a good environment. Another variable that could impact student outcomes is the structure and the setup of the test. There are a lot of moving parts in the screen, and I get that we live in a technology-centered world, but this was kind of overwhelming. Students physically had to find the place where the answers were, scroll somewhere else in the screen, and put it in the correct place. And additionally, poorly worded questions made it so that even if students knew the skill, they might not be able to accurately display that skill because the question didn't use language that was found in the Common Core or taught by teachers. The last variable is student knowledge. That's sort of the gold standard. That's what we're shooting for. But in my opinion, this was pretty far down the list of what was actually assessed this year. Overall, I'd recommend that if this test is to be used as the benchmark assessment for student learning, it needs to be heavily refined. Programs need to be put in place to ensure that park technology instruction doesn't come at the expense of core academic instruction. Questions need to be vetted in order to determine if they're grade level appropriate, and the problems within the test program itself need to be fixed. While it might take some time, it's critical to get it right, because even though right now this seems more like a political issue than anything else, if we as a state fail to do it correctly, our students are the ones who are going to lose.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Fiorentino, and I'm the parent of 2 high school students in the city of Springfield. By vocation, I'm a case manager and employment specialist for people with developmental disabilities. I will start with the encounter of mathematics, since Common Core, some parts were instituted in the learning. My child, my youngest, was bringing home material that was appropriate enough for his age and grade, but required overcomplicated and estimated approaches to appropriately answer the questions. It was not enough to know the answer or show the work. He had to explain in an open response form how this answer was achieved, utilizing estimate calculations and box and whisker plots. This was disturbing enough, as a simple mathematical equation would have sufficed, been more accurate, and would have led to a more effective use of his time. However, as I tried to explain the old school way of doing things and how he could get the answer, I was told by my child that he can't do it the right way because they want estimations, not answers. My response was, if you were a chemist and you estimated your mathematics, you could blow yourself up. Clearly I was no longer an effective tutor for my own child. This year, both of my children were given the tests for Park. My oldest, he's kind of my conspiracy theorist guy. he chose to disregard it because of knowledge that he has based on Agenda 21 and its overbearing authority over our sovereign nation, which includes the realm of education and its connection to Common Core and Park. My other found that the navigation to be completely horrendous, the scroll bars and multiple windows to be overwhelming, never mind the twisted way in which the questions were asked, which apparently is a common theme. He also encountered that when he opened different windows to attain the text to answer the question, he was often booted out of the test and had to start again. When the second round of park testing came around, he opted out completely and studied for his finals for his major subjects instead. I also wanted to briefly discuss the Teacher Plus statistic that 79% of teachers surveyed are in favor of park testing. When reading the report, there were only 1,028 teachers who participated. Only 941 of them even answered the question if they thought park was of a higher quality than current state exams. Only 78.5% were in favor of it. This, of course, was after they had received training on how great Common Core was, how wonderful the park assessment is, and after receiving an honorarium for their participation and expertise. Please understand that there are over 3.3 million public school teachers across the country. The number of those surveyed represents only 0.000356% of the educational professionals across the nation, and can hardly be denoted as a rubric for success nor an accurate reflection of the opinion to be so widely advertised as it has been. Massachusetts represents a varied population. Not everyone learns in the same way. One of my concerns is for our special education departments, which will have a hard time implementing these rigorous standards and may simply give way to aging students out of the system at 22 instead of educating them to be successful. Incorporating the national and global copyrighted standards is nothing short of tyranny, packaged up pretty with a credit card attached. We are not the UN, we are not under a socialist regime, we are not a one-size-fits-all people. And I pray that Common Core and Park falls away to the sea like tea in the harbor. Good intentions often fail for lack of forethought of the consequences and for the greed that stirs within the heart of man, leaving a people bankrupt and a society ruined for generations to come.
Daisy Hernandez, Wilfredo Lopez.
My name is Daisy Hernandez. I'm a mother of a 10th grade student at Commerce. Can you hear me now?
Yes, close.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I am a mother of a 10th grade student at High School of Commerce in Springfield, and I am a Stanford Children member. As a parent, I support the adoption of Park as our state test because I believe we need a test that will help parents understand if their children are ready for college. Stanford Children members had an opportunity to provide feedback to the developers of Park on the look and format of the students' core score reports that will be given to parents. I like that parents are able to see how their child's Park scores compare to other students across the country. I know my child will compete with students from other states for college admissions and jobs, and having a state test that is shared with other states will help me understand how my child compares not only to students in Massachusetts, but across the country as well. I also believe a family should be able to move throughout the country and feel confident that their children would not be behind in another state, and that we have a common idea of what it means to be a successful student. Teachers will need a lot of training in order for our students to understand how to think critically and eventually be successful with these exams. But I believe this preparation is worth it. I ask that we continue to give our students the opportunity to be challenged and measure their abilities to be ready for college and jobs by adopting Park as our state test. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lorenzo Gaines, and I'm speaking on behalf of Wilfredo Lopez, Chairman Sagan, and Commissioner Mitchell, and members of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. I'm speaking in support of adopting Park. Good evening. My name is Wilfredo Lopez. I am a father of three, a commercial...
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. Is he here or he's unable to testify?
He was unable to testify.
Okay, thank you.
Just reading his statement.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wilfredo Lopez. I'm a father of 3, a commercial real estate broker, and a Stand for Children member. I've lived in Springfield for over 35 years, and I'm an active member of the community. I'm on the Alternatives to Violence Council, the committee for the Springfield Puerto Rican Parade, and I'm very active in my children's school. All of my children currently attend Sabas International Charter School in Springfield. They're in 3rd, 4th, and 8th grade. I was pleased with the feedback I received from them after they took the PARCC test this year. They felt positive about the test, and they said they thought it was better because sometimes there were multiple questions just from one example, which they found easier to understand and more like what they had been learning in school. I believe we must raise expectations for our children and our educators so that children are ready for college. Please adopt the PARCC as our state test. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go a few more minutes and we'll take a short break. Anyone needs one? Jonathan Torsha, Timothy Collins, and Maureen Colgan Posner, or Posner. And while you're coming up, I'll remind you to please listen for the buzzer and try to keep to time so we can hear from everybody who has signed up. Mr. Torsha?
Yes.
Welcome.
He wants to go last.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
We're gonna go, yeah.
We'll go the other way around. That'd be
I guess we're setting
I'm
our own order.
flexible.
My name is Tim Collins. I'm president of the Springfield Education Association. The title of my testimony is Testing Mania Hinders Teaching. It's time for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to stop implementing the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, an accountability system that is more about shame, blame, and punish than study, learn, and support. I still refuse to call the Elementary and Secondary Education Act No Child Left Behind because it leaves far too many children behind. First, here in Massachusetts, MCAS or PARCC are crooked yardsticks. They are criterion reference tests, fixed targets that do not measure the individual student's growth, which is the true measure of the work we do in schools. Second, MCAS growth measurement is anything but a growth model. It compares students' scores across the state that have the same score this year and next year, and then plots it on a bell curve, guaranteeing that 40% of the students, regardless of how much they've grown, are going to be deemed as having poor growth. Third, presently there are students that have taken MCAS, students that have taken PARCC, but there's been no analysis of the comparability of these assessments. It took several years of administering MCAS before DESE felt it was reliable enough to use in the current manner that it's being used. It would be irresponsible to use data and make high-stakes decisions about students, teachers, schools, and school districts with 2 different assessments and no analysis of their comparability or validity. Fourth, too many children in cities like Springfield and Holyoke face tremendous challenges, such as abject poverty, unemployment, underemployment. Far too many children who are in foster care, homeless, immigrants, refugees, special needs, not native English speakers, and are adjudicated in the juvenile justice system. And far too many children whose families and neighborhoods have been ravaged by the opiate epidemic and the underground economy that supports it. In my 43 years as an educator, I know firsthand that children facing such challenges are resilient and, given the support they need, can overcome these challenges. But the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and its testing mania has kept us from educating the whole child. If it's not tested, it's not valued. Classes like art, music, shop, home and careers, and many other have been severely limited since the implementation of testing. Every child needs a chance to shine during the school day. And when students are interested in something like these courses, they are pathways to reading, writing, math, and science. If they are interested and care about something, they're willing to overcome some difficult challenges. Finally, there is no longer time to build relationships with challenged children, teaching them the skills they need to follow through with difficult tasks, as well as the skills to be able to work collaboratively and respectfully with their classmates. The social, emotional, behavioral, and spiritual and physical growth of these children is every bit as important as the academic growth. These are the things children need in order to become good citizens, good parents, good neighbors, and positive, productive human beings. I truly believe we need to fight so that our schools can once again educate the whole child. There's a whole lot more involved in human growth than can be measured on any standardized test. A moratorium is needed, so an in-depth study of the impact of the testing situation in this Commonwealth schools can be done and adjustments made. You know, we in Massachusetts hold our students to the highest standards in the nation. No teacher is opposed to high standards. But if we do not provide the resources so that all children excel, especially those facing the challenges that I mentioned, it's tantamount to child abuse. The foundation formula for funding education has not changed since 1993. The conditions in places like Springfield and Holyoke and Fall River, our gateway cities, have changed dramatically. The challenges our children face, they can't overcome. If this board would submit to the governor and the legislature a budget that had the resources to meet the needs of every challenge that every child has, then every child would succeed. Thank you.
I probably should have said I'll go first. He's a hard act to follow. Good evening. My name is Maureen Colgan-Posner. I'm a teacher in the Springfield Public Schools, and I'm here today because I believe Park is a waste of time, energy, and money. We have supposedly a valid and reliable standardized test called the MCAS. Your very own literature states that Massachusetts students rank #1 on the NAEP and near the top on the PISA, the national and international report cards on student performance. So we're already doing that. So we already have that test called the MCAS. We shouldn't waste another dime or minute reinventing the testing wheel. The concern seems to be that our students are not college or career ready. Well, despite the claim that the new assessment will help build a pathway to college and career readiness, we all know that testing cannot make students college or career ready. What is going to make students ready for their future is time to learn, to explore, to develop, and to grow. We've spent too many years trying to use tests to do something they are not capable of doing. An assessment cannot make students college or career ready. Tests do not teach. Teachers teach. And teachers need time to teach. Investing millions of dollars for test taking and test prep materials is a foolish investment. We need to invest in things like music and art, shop classes, and drama. Our children deserve a well-rounded education. That won't be done with testing, but that would be money well spent.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jonathan Torsha. I'm a high school student. I'm 16. I'm an incoming junior at East Longmeadow High School. I'm also the class president. I'd like to just start off, I commend Governor Charlie Baker for having these meetings so that the public, whether you support it or oppose it, can speak their mind freely to the board here. I personally, representing many of the students that I've spoken to, the teachers, the parents, I think unanimously, from where I'm from, do not like the idea of even standardized testing at all. I think it's unhealthy. I've talked to people that can't even function correctly, because it just takes so long and the process is so long. And I'm sort of also echoing what everybody else has said so far. These standardized tests, I don't think represent the essence and what you could get out of a student fully. And the problem I've found is that, you know, some of these Common Core standards have not been able, we've not even been able to complete them at the end of the semester. So a teacher, that's one example I wanted to bring up, that they haven't been able to complete some of the Common Core Algebra 2 classes, for example, and they've not even been able to complete them at the end of the semester. And I think that's a big red flag if you can't even complete what's actually in the books. You know, and you know, speaking for many people that take a long time to maybe take tests, and you know, I use a lot of that time up. I think having time standards on tests is absolutely absurd. I mean, the fact that you have to write, or you have to, you know, fill in bubbles in a certain amount of time, I just don't think is smart, because some people are very quick. I know people that can finish it like that. Other people like me, it takes a long time, and I know some people that could never really finish them. And you know, when you're sitting in there for 3 or 4 hours, and you know, you want to get out of there. You don't want, oh well, you know, I'll add a little bit more detail. You know, so students are not able to fully get out everything that they want, because it's just such a long test. The process is so long. Fortunately, East Long Meadow had the opportunity to have to do it pencil and paper, but you know, there's a lot of problems with the computer one. I know at East Long Meadow High School, I know the middle school and the elementary school did it pencil and paper, but we did it on the computer. And there's a lot of problems that ran into that. You know, the idea of taking a test on the computer is new to a lot of people. You know, we are obviously a tech-savvy group, but we, you know, it's difficult. It's difficult to, you know, type out your response. You want to write it down first, get your thoughts down, and then finally type it, which again takes an even more longer and more complicated process. I think the idea of having courses set up just to be where at the end you take one test and that decides your fate completely is also absolutely absurd. You know, I know people who do A's and, you know, are fantastic in their classes, but maybe one day they just don't do well on that MCAS test, that PARC test, and oh well. Is that my time? 30 seconds. You know, it's not, some people just aren't that great at taking tests, and the idea of having everybody, you know, a one-size-fits-all practice to be implemented for standardized tests is, I think, just absolutely wrong and absurd. And I represent the students. You know, all these people, you know, on the pro side, the opposed side, whatever they are, they're all, you know, teachers, parents. Speaking from a student's perspective, this is a disaster. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We appreciate it. It only takes a certain amount of courage to come up and speak in front of all these adults. Do it regularly. Thank you. We'll do one more panel and then we'll take a break. Chris Tulpa, Alan Agnidi. Well, we'll do 2, and then I've got 2 names on the next one. So we'll do 2 if you're here, and then we'll take a break.